Well, here it is again, this Dell Dimension 8100 personal computer that I'm turning into a video network attached storage server. And the biggest update here is that I got my disks. I have here on the bottom the Samsung Eco Green and the Seagate low RPM, low power series Barracuda. Now, one thing I did before I put either one of these disks in here, I ran them through a level 5 SpinRite run. Now, SpinRite, S-P-I-N-R-I-T-E, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a disk maintenance and monitoring and testing tool provided by published by the Gibson Research Corporation. And basically what SpinRite does is it deeply examines the magnetic surface of a disk to make sure that it's in good shape by performing special pattern testing. SpinRite also has another trick that it can pull out of its hat when a drive is troubled, and that is the ability to sit there and read and reread and maybe never get a perfect read, but maybe get enough differing reads that one good read can be assembled from all the bad ones. Now, I was skeptical at first, and I've seen times when SpinRite simply couldn't do it, when a drive was too far gone. But I've also seen SpinRite take a Seagate boot drive out of a Macintosh, as one example, an 80 gig parallel ATA Seagate boot drive that was sitting there clicking while trying to boot the Mac OS, and eventually the system just locked up. An hour later, SpinRite had managed to convince that drive to relocate some data off of some bad spots onto some spare good spots, because practically all modern hard drives contain spare sectors in case one goes bad. And the drive was happy once again and is able to be cloned to a new one and then taken out of service. So if you're looking for a tool that might help you when your hard drive decides to go down on you, SpinRite might well be worth the purchase price. But your mileage could certainly vary. Anyway, I have the VIA VT6421 based serial ATA, and it has a parallel ATA channel on it, but I'm not using that card, plugged into these two drives, and both of them have been set to their serial ATA 1.5 gigabit data rate because the VIA board won't recognize drives that... Not all revisions of the VIA 6421 chip can recognize a serial ATA drive operating at a 3 gigabit signaling rate and negotiate for the slower 1.5 gigabit data rate. Got all the power connectors hooked up. Got the CF card in there to boot from. Both of these drives passed SpinRite without any ill effects, and the Seagate in particular, I read some of the reviews on Newegg, and a lot of them suggested that the drive might just be a pain, but you know what? This drive has not exhibited any of the behaviors that people talk about as far as bad drives go. It hasn't sat there and made clicking noises or anything like that. It just sits there and runs quietly. So the next thing to do is to take the thing in there to where my networking stuff comes into the house, take it into the closet there, and hook it up and start setting up the RAID 1 that I intend to make out of these two drives. Alright, here I am with everything temporarily hooked up in the closet, and for those of you who are wondering why my poor wireless router is somewhat taken apart, it had a little overheating problem that I had to rectify because this little heat pad here fell off the system processor and then it overheated and it crashed, but it didn't kill it. I intend to do something better than that because it seems whatever adhesive properties that thing had left, it's lost, so I'll probably filch a heat sink off of a dead motherboard and put that on there somehow, figure a way of doing that, and then it should have a happy long life. But back to the task at hand. Here's this Dimension 8100 plugged in and ready to go. And you'll know when a Dell machine of this vintage is ready to go, or at least has standby power, because there's a little yellow sun on the motherboard in there. It's a lot brighter than it looks. Now on the front here, a difference from the Optiplex GX400, you have the power button, of course. And then you have this E button, and at first I thought Dell was just being fancy and they put their slanted E on the reset button, but that's not true. That button is supposed to launch some kind of a Dell thing under the preloaded operating system. It's not actually a reset button. I imagine that the difference is in how the system BIOS interprets them. One of them obviously is a reset, and the other one sends a call to the operating system or to a Dell application that happens to be listening. But that's not going to happen here, so that's terribly useful. Anyway, go ahead and power up here. You don't need a fancy monitor for this. I have some monochrome IBM ones downstairs, but I didn't feel like going to get them, so here goes. And it seems we've only got one disc showing up for some reason, so I must have a cable that's loose or something. let's see if it sees 2 hard drives. Hopefully it will. Hey, look at that. Just make sure that goes ahead and boots here like it ought to. You can actually see the compact flash adapter in operation. It's got some LEDs of its own, plus that little sun on the motherboard down there. So it ought to be booting up any moment, and then I can go in the other room and I can set up the disk array.